Hello, welcome to Let's Run Facebook Ads, the podcast. Myself, Nick Boddington. Today we have a very exciting guest. Well, it's exciting because we've got a very good guest. Bailey Proulx. That's how I pronounce it, isn't it? It is Proulx.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is a Facebook marketer, expert Facebook marketer that I've been following. I came across you, Bailey, in AdWorld last year while I'm there writing loads of notes down. How can I make I guess we're always looking for that holy grail of that thing that we can put into place and it suddenly changes everything in our ads. I did learn some, as we've just been chatting about that, I did learn some stuff about how you scale your accounts using Excel, I guess essentially using an Excel spreadsheet to detail down all the different things you're doing, or a Google sheet, which I thought was really interesting. And since then, I've been seeing on YouTube, other interviews been doing, and thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. Today, I wanted to basically discuss all the things that we're pulling our hair out with at the moment, because it seems to be, we've had this iOS and it was all right when that first kicked in. Things are becoming harder now. And I think it's really starting to get to the point that if you're good, you're all right. If you're relying on just posting an ad and hoping for the best, you're kind of hitting a brick wall. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I think those days have passed. It definitely needs a lot more of a special touch to it now, between tracking and attribution and just systems and processes. So it takes a little bit to dial in, but we'll cover that here today.
Absolutely. So why don't you start by giving us a little bit of background of your experience, what you're doing as you're an agency owner, and then we can get into a few questions and see if you can save everyone's day.
Yeah. So I actually started off in an education business with my mentor, and he's actually now a partner here inside the agency. And I came on as basically one of his first hires and helped him grow that company from 0 to 60 million in 4 years. And I was heading the whole marketing team. And then I actually stepped down from the marketing side and started handling the media buying side, because I went out to this event in Barcelona and I saw these people talking about testing that I've never even heard of before. So I took over media buying for that, ended up leaving, started the agency because we had this really special, I guess, sauce, I guess you could say, that we were able to replicate time and time and time again. I knew there's a lot of people out there that needed the service. Like, they had good products, they just didn't know how to get into people. They try to hire in-house, that wasn't the solution. They try to hire an agency. Unfortunately, most agencies don't care that much, and they're just not that good, to be completely honest. And so I ended up wanting to start the agency, started that a few years ago. And ever since then, we grew. We work with some of the biggest names in the info space now. Right now, we're only in the info, high ticket webinar / VSL space. And I was able to grow a team behind me. We have lots of systems and processes and lots of technical things that we can get into a little bit as far as tracking, since iOS got crazy. But yeah, it's kind of how I got into this world and where we're at now.
Yeah. So you said so yours has started about 8 because you couldn't find other agencies.
Yeah. So actually in that company, we hired all the best agencies in our space and none of them made us any money. Wow. One of them broke us even, not including their fees, and none of them made us any money. And it was when I was heading the marketing, I went out to that event and they were talking about split testing currencies. And here's how they spent $400,000 in 4 days. And I was like, this is a whole nother world. And I'm just, I'm a little nerd by heart. So I wanted to dive into that. And then I was able to crack it. We went from $1,000 a day to 10,000 within a week, or not a week, within a month.
Is that with your own agency?
This was for that client.
For your client.
So it was actually, I was working full time.
Went from that, did it?
Yeah. So within 1 month, we went from 1,000 a day to 10,000 a day. With that, at the time I was in-house before he branched off. So technically my first client, I guess, because he was, I was working under him. And then, that's when we decided to branch off about 1.5 years after that. After I started dialing the processes and really understanding everything, that's when we ended up branching off and started the agency.
Now, was that a hard scale in a month?
At the time, this is in 2018, maybe 2017. It was a little different then. There's a lot of things I was doing that people weren't doing in info, but there was a lot of manual bidding. There was a lot of just different things that used to work a lot better for easily adding that budget. But our CPA was about $140 on a $100 product with about a $500 back end. So he's just like, hey, go and spend. I was like, okay, cool. I'll go ahead and spend.
Yeah, it's brilliant, because it's interesting. We had Eric Huberman on the podcast from Hawk Media, and he was on with us last week. And he was saying, he's grown that to $175 million valuation in 8 years, but which is amazing. And he was just like, I just couldn't find anyone good.
Yeah.
But the space isn't different now. I mean, myself as an agency, we have the best interests at heart. Our clients, we want to make our clients money. It creates longevity. If we don't think we can help if something's going wrong, we're completely honest with it. So many agencies just seem to have this very short window of get them in, loads of promises, can't deliver, lose. And they just keep going round and round.
100%. That's why we built it in. I know core values is thrown out a lot, but it's actually really important to us inside the agency. So our biggest thing is we really sat down and figured out, how do we have the biggest impact in the world? Do we create our own stuff and go and sell it? Or do we take what we have and help everyone else multiply their ripple and actually give back to our clients and actually help them? And that's why we're very strict with who we bring on board, because they actually have to have a product that actually helps their community and their clients. But when we do, like, we're very in the process. We love what our clients are doing. We want to make sure we get the info to as many people as possible. And we really do, at the end of the day, have the best interest at heart for the client.
So if you're doing info products and services and things like that, then you're very much in depth on the lead generation stuff. So you're taking someone from Facebook, other platforms, to their landing pages, to the info product itself.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit deeper than like lead generation specifically, because there is such a longer funnel, right? They go through a VSL, they go through a booked call funnel, they go through a webinar. It's a lot longer of a process, which is where we had to really tweak our SOPs here in the beginning. So it's a lot longer of a process, and the optimization pieces and stuff change quite a bit compared to ecom. So it's a longer funnel, but yeah, most of it is spent on how do we generate the highest quality, cheap lead for our clients. And then doing booked calls, we have a whole special structure we do for that too, to make sure they're getting the highest quality, cheap leads too. So lots of ways of passing that data back to Facebook to help optimize.
Do you find that the structure that do you have a winning structure for that niche?
I would definitely say so. Yes.
Yeah. So you could literally take on another info client, build in the same structure, and it will work.
Yeah. But I have a very good framework that we follow inside that process. So our bare minimum we work with is they're already spending 15 grand a month, because they already have to have baseline KPIs. And we have to know what we're testing against. We're very big into KPIs, conversion rates. Like, our big thing is, we're gonna get you a higher quality lead. We might pay 20% more on the front end, but here's why that's more important. You might have the show up rate might increase 10%. The initiate checkout might increase 20%. The initiate checkout to purchase might increase 50%. And so for us, as we're tweaking the top of funnel, we have all the KPIs in place that's actually pulled from the client CRM to be able to justify if the higher quality lead, the higher cost, higher quality lead is actually worth it on the back end. So we have different things we do to help roll it out, but it's pretty plug and play at this point.
So if we're going to keep things kind of simple without going into the whole info product funnel, if we're working to a top of funnel, a middle funnel, and a bottom funnel for someone who's trying to generate, let's say they've got they're a consultancy service or something, and they're trying to get people into their own webinar, or they're trying to get people into a workshop or something like that, and they're keeping their funnel kind of simple. What would you say if we're talking about the top of funnel, and then the middle of funnel and the bottom funnel is starting to become your retargeting? What would you say is a nice, simple strategy to go by, from some testing audiences at the top? How would you do those? How would you optimize for that? And how would you bring them in? Because one of the questions I've got, which this might lead into, is, how bad traffic can create bad leads, or too much of the wrong traffic can create traffic. How do you explain that when you're starting at the top of funnel on a strategy? Yeah,
so I'm going to just pretend that everybody has some data here, because data is the most important piece with Facebook now. So one of the very first things we do with the client is, especially for top of funnel, is, it sounds simple, but there's a lot of reasoning behind it. But it's always starting off their highest quality audiences, the lookalike version of them. So if they have purchasers, cool. If they have quality booked calls, cool. If they have people that attend the webinar, whatever it may be. And so we're using those, and then we're always doing exclusions as much as possible. So not exclusions like your typical exclusions, but exclusions as in, what type of data does the client have on who's not quality, who doesn't have money, who doesn't have these things. And so what we're doing is, every piece of data is a good piece of data for us. So for the people that have come into their funnel that aren't quality, we take the audience, upload it, and we create lookalikes, and then we're excluding the bad quality people. Because one big thing with Facebook is they're making it harder and harder to target your target audience. But Facebook has a bunch of data points on these people you upload. And so you can make it really easy to say, hey, Facebook, I know you're making it harder to target people, but don't target these people. And when you upload an email, they already have those data points from before iOS. Even if they turned off their tracking, they still have those data points. And so it's really unique the way that works. We did this the first time about 3 years ago, and our client that we were working with had a 30% refund rate, and we got it down to less than 10% from doing this one change. And we're like, oh, wow, this actually works pretty well. So that's the number one thing we do when you roll out the account. And then we have about a 3-phase system that we do. We have the launch, the optimize, and then our scale phase. So the very first thing we do is basically use the audiences, and we're testing out creatives. We do every single creative gets tested through 4 different audiences, because Facebook has different slivers it's going to deliver traffic to. Lots of variables that go into an audience working or not. So we're trying to hedge ourselves between different audiences and making sure we have conclusive results, not just anomalies that show up here and there. So we're doing 4 different pieces of creative multiplied by the 4 different audiences when we test it. We take out the winning creatives and we move those over to what we call the optimize phase. So the optimize phase is now that we have these individual piece of winning creatives, what are the combinations of these that are working well, right? Because certain types of videos won't work well with certain types of copy, and vice versa. So the optimize phase is the phase that we're saying, hey, we have all these different types of winning creatives. Let's find the winning combinations of these. And then the scale phase of that is, okay, now we have these winning audiences. We've proven the audiences. We've proven the creatives. Now this is where about 70% of our budget goes. We have them in different types of structures that we do, mostly ABOs, which we can get into later. So mostly ad set budget optimizations. These are where a lot of our budget goes. And when those are running, we really try to keep those running as much as possible, because the ad set stores a lot of data. So as creatives start to die off inside of there, we already have a backlog of all of our other winning combinations that we can do. So as we take out a couple, let's say you have 4 inside of your winning ad set. If 2 of them lose, take off the 2, and then have your next 2 that are your most recent winners plugged in the bottom. So we're always refreshing those as much as possible. That's where we start getting into manual bids. That's where we start getting into all that. So that's cold. Warm, the way that we consider warm is everybody that has not seen the offer. So if it's a VSL, we have delayed scripts on the VSL pages that fire off when someone actually gets to the call to action. Same thing with webinars, same thing with all processes. So that changes a little bit. We know that the whole context of the conversation is for them to get to see the offer, right? That's the most important piece. There's no point to retarget them with testimonials of buyers compared to testimonials maybe of what the thing is you're trying to pitch them on, which might be the webinar or the VSL, whatever that piece is. Yeah. So we're still using conversions there because they haven't proven to me enough that they are quality prospects. And if we go to like video view retargeting or reach retargeting there, you end up going to get a lower quality person. So at that phase, that's where we're hitting those types of content. And then also just very basic, like here's what you're going to get inside the webinar, much more basic. The hot is everyone that has seen the offer. And that is where a couple of custom things come in here. That's where we do demos. That's where we do actual client testimonials. That's where we have things we roll out like ad roll where we can retarget. And then that we typically go to doing a reach or a video view campaign there. And then we also do manual bidding there a lot too, depending on the size of the audience. So based off the size of the audience, if it's really small, you're not really going to get a lot of impressions because it's so small. So one thing we have to do is we have to force Facebook to deliver that traffic. Let's say the cart closes in 4 days. You're not running a bunch of traffic. The audience is 50 people. You might get 5 impressions. Yeah. But what we do then is we take, okay, well, here's what our current CPM is on the account for the reach. And let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5x bid on that in the reach. Usually about the 2 or 3x bid works, and we can actually force that spend. And so we're getting much cheaper CPMs. We're making sure we're getting in front of our prospects. And then we can actually switch it from 1 impression every 3 days to 3 impressions every day. So they're constantly getting hit with us on platform. That's the simplest way to break that down.
Are you at the top of funnel, or you're optimizing for conversions?
Still optimizing for conversions.
Yeah. So this is where I think a lot of people go wrong, isn't it? And we see this in a lot of agencies. So when we win business and we're getting access to someone else's ad manager, it's amazing how you see so many old-fashioned, like when I do talks, when I'm talking to the audience and we're talking about traffic, how we talk about traffic of people coming through a funnel, and how someone talks about traffic and then they choose the traffic objective. 2 whole different things, aren't they? Because it has to be a conversion objective the whole time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And the way we look at it is they have to prove themselves to us. They have to prove themselves to us enough for us to be able to go to a reach. And to us, that's them at least seeing the offer. If you go top of funnel and you don't do that, like I see a lot of people still talking about leading with content and then retargeting with direct response marketing, because then you get to warm them up. But the problem with that though, is you're feeding your top of funnel with not quality people. So even when you do go and do your remarketing with direct response type actual ads, you're already feeding that whole funnel with the wrong quality person. So yeah, it might be a little bit cheaper, but then the quality of people that you're retargeting aren't quality people compared to maybe doing a ad and then doing some sort of content retargeting and then going back to direct response.
It's
absolutely crucial to do conversions now.
So conversion. So what about if you're at the top of funnel, you are, let's say you've got a B2B product or something like that, and you're really trying to educate and bring people in with some content. Let's say you're wanting to send them to a blog page. So you would still use a conversion campaign, test out your audiences, but you're taking them to a blog page on the website, for instance. But because you're using a conversion objective, it's pulling in the right people to go to the blog. And then would you use video views, or would you use a conversion campaign with a video?
You're talking about for the remarketing part of that?
Well, still at the top of funnel. And then, so let's say you had a video, your client's got a video, it's great. And they're like, we want to use it. Would you use a conversion campaign playing the video and create an audience based off it, or a video views campaign with the video?
I'd still say conversions. Yeah. There's still too top of funnel for me not to do conversions.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And that's what we do. Just hoping that you say the same thing. But well, we've tested it in the past, and it's not actually that much more expensive to do the conversions compared to the video views. So then they're middle of funnel. So you could do video replays, you could do people who've been on a blog, but it's just, I think this is the really important thing to take out of this. It's always using the conversions objective the whole way through the funnel.
Yes, 100%. Facebook has a very good grasp now who's quality and who's not. And there's a reason why you're going to pay a little bit of a lower CPM for the other prospects. Facebook's smart. I don't give them too much control, but they at least know who's going to convert. And who's
Absolutely. And I think it's having trust in the platform. So you're talking about lookalikes, and this is a good one, because we read everywhere, and I don't know whether they're using it as their nice little headline hooks or whatever, that lookalikes don't work anymore.
I would beg to differ.
Yeah. So how small? So with the iOS and the fact that their targeting is obviously becoming harder, does a 1% and a 2% lookalike still work, or would you go straight up to the 5 and plus?
We usually start at 3, not because they don't necessarily work, but because for some reason 1% lookalikes, they tax us for. I mean, our CPMs are typically double on that. So in order for that to make sense, the quality of that lead has to be doubled, and it's not going to usually be double. I mean, sometimes we'll test it, but very rarely does it ever beat a 3. So we typically start with 3, and we'll test 5, 7, 10. We're usually always somewhere in those increments.
So when you're, and I love the exclusions, the lookalike exclusions that you're talking about. So would you stick to a 1% exclusion?
We usually only do 1%. Every time we do more than that, they again tax us a lot on the CPM. With 1% exclusions, we notice a little bit of a jump in CPM, but on the back end, it way makes itself up.
I think that's brilliant. So someone else we interviewed the other day was talking about a method that they use, especially on the large scale when they're trying to scale. And it'd be interesting to see what your view is on this, because it kind of makes logical sense. So if we look at it like a dartboard, okay, and the whole of the dartboard is one audience. So let's say the whole of the dartboard is lookalike 5% of your purchases, okay? But as you know, in a dartboard, you've got all the little areas, haven't you, where your darts go with little numbers. He was saying that rather than seeing the audience as one dart goes in and you leave it there, he's seen success by running a CBO campaign budget optimization, for anyone who still struggles with that. Putting the budget at the top, creating a 5% lookalike ad set, and then multiplying that ad set identically multiple times. And you'll get, and like there are multiple audiences, different ones, but it's the same one. Because let's say Facebook on ad set 1, lookalike 5, finds you as a lead, and then thinks, oh, I'm going to go and find more Baileys. And then ad set 3 is me, same lookalike, but they find me first and then find multiples of me, like little pockets, all within a large audience. Have you tried that? Do you agree with that?
We don't do CBO too much based off of the current funnel flow, but yeah, we definitely do that even at an ad set budget optimization level. The way that we explain it is it's slivers, right? So the first bit of people that get traffic and either do or don't convert is really going to define which direction that ad set goes. So that's why in the beginning, and we were talking about testing out different creatives, we always test it with 4 different audiences. And it can be sometimes the 4 same audiences, but it has different pockets. That's right. It does have different pockets. Yeah. They're each going to perform differently. You're just looking for the winning pocket.
Okay. So when you say 4 audiences, 4 creators, is that just your go-to? Have you seen success for that? So no matter how much budget you got, let's say I said to you, right, I've got 2,000 a day, or I've got 200 a day. And, you know, people listen to this podcast, they're more likely going to be than the 50, 100, 200 sort of budget a day. Why have you chosen 4 audiences? Why not? So, you know, you might say, sometimes we talk about, you know, especially with a smaller client or smaller audience, they're saying, well, how much, I've only got this much budget. How much will I spend? And I said, well, think of every audience as it has to be a minimum of £10. Would you agree with that sort of thing? I mean, you're dealing with bigger money because of the clients that you come in, but the same sort of strategy with a lower budget, would you stick with those 4 audiences and make sure you've got minimum $40 a day?
I would. Yeah. So our current clients are obviously at a little bit of a higher level, minimum 500 a day, but I also do a lot of coaching for different communities that are in that lower level. And we come out, show ads accounts, do all that. And I definitely do recommend having my preference more around 15 to 20 if you can. And it is still 4, because what you're doing is you're hedging yourself against anomalies, because you're going to find anomalies a lot in Facebook. So when we do that, we launch it. And then what we do is then we look up in that specific campaign, we look up the actual naming convention for that creative. And then we take the average that it performed over the 4 ad sets. So you're running 4, let's say we have V1, V2, V3, V4. Then after it's done, after exactly 5 days, basically, so we wait 4 full days, then we look on the 5th. We go to the search, we type in V1, see what it did over the last 4 different ad sets, and then we take that average. And then we base it off the averages, not just the anomalies that stick out.
Right, okay. And then attached to each of those 4 ad sets, you've got your 4 creatives.
Yes, exactly.
On each ad set. So then you've got 16 creatives going on in this campaign, haven't you? That's right.
16, yeah, 4 unique, 16 total. Yeah.
Okay. And do you test copy at the same time, or do you, when you found your winners, do you then move on to another stage of testing?
Yeah, so we test. So in that structure, let's say we're testing video. We have already a winning piece of copy, already a winning headline, and already winning audience. And we're testing those isolated, as controlled as possible. I'm really big on keeping things completely isolated, because otherwise you have too many variables that get mixed in there. The way I describe it is, there's one thing I remember in science class at high school: a controlled variable and you have a manipulated variable. Based off the result, you can have your hypothesis on why it didn't work. So we only ever have one manipulated variable at a time. So we do videos separate, we do headlines separate, we do copy separate. That's why in the optimized phase, you're going to have winning videos that pop out of there. You're going to have winning copy from when you do your copy test. You're going to have winning headlines, but they haven't been grouped together. So our optimized phase is, hey, you had 2 winning videos here, 2 copy, and 1 headline. Now, what are the variations of those that we can go and test together to see how those actually start working together before we move them over to the scale phase?
Okay. So you don't use dynamic creative?
I do not use dynamic creative. That is me. That's because we do high ticket stuff. And if it's dynamic creative, I lose a lot of control. And also Facebook is going to favor the one with lower cost leads. And I'm not going after lower cost leads. I'm going after the cheapest high quality lead, which means I have to have control of that budget. So I'm doing dynamic creative. Facebook's going to say, okay, this one has 10, 12, 8, and 6. And it's going to favor the one at 6. But if I can say, hey, this one's at 6, but I know that my booked call rate with this one, has 1 for $200. This one has 4 at $60 each. Facebook doesn't see that, nor do they care about that, because that's not what you're optimizing for. You're optimizing for the lead cost. So Facebook is going to favor the one that actually is not technically the winner, because it's not higher quality leads. It might have more interest, it might be more open, but it's not as intent based. So lots of variables that go in there. So I personally do not do dynamic creative.
So when you're saying the high quality, is that because of what's happening after Facebook, after they've left Facebook, and what's happening on the client end with the bookings and things like that?
Yeah, exactly. So whatever the sales process is, let's say it's a VSL to application of booked call. Facebook isn't going to see those stats, but I have all those integrated into my ads manager as custom conversions, and there's server side tracking and high roast and all these other things too we have to patch together. But then we take that data, and that's how we make our decisions based off what's winning and not winning, not based off the lead costs or what Facebook says necessarily, but on what happens on the back end that proves that they're quality or not quality.
Right. Okay. So that can lead us nicely onto custom conversions, because this is something you talk a lot about, and something that not a lot of people do, or probably even understand what they're doing with it. So do you want to explain? So in your ads manager, you've got your columns, you've created some custom conversions, and you've put these in certain places after the click, essentially. Mm-hmm. So that is telling you that, let's say ad set 1, version 1, let's say they've all created 10 leads each. So you've got 4 ads, they've all got 10 leads each on a day. but you're seeing that the custom conversions after the click on the client side, 10 of those, or let's say 20 of those have come in for the call. So you'll start it, and then you're bringing that back into the columns, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. So there's a few reasons why we do custom conversions. One of them being it gives us all that data, right? So let's use the same example here, the registration, VSL, application, books call. So typically people would see, if you're using standard events, you can see a click, you can see a lead, you see application submit, and you'd see booked call. For us, we have obviously the first two, which is click and then lead. And then we have delayed script. So we have an actual script that we wrote that just delays pixel firing. So we can fire that off at 2 minutes, 4 minutes. When they see the offer, we can do application clicked, application submitted, booked call submitted. So these other things that we can track that Facebook doesn't naturally give us, that we're able to say, hey, maybe let's say that your booked call rate is $400. Maybe you haven't even got to the point you can spend enough to get to that point to actually have the booked calls. But what are early indicators showing us? This one had 10 leads, but only 9 of them made it past, or let's say one of them made it past 2 minutes. And this one got 10 leads, but 9 of them made it past 2 minutes, right? Okay, that one's clearly more quality because they actually stuck and they actually started going through. And I'm a big believer in Facebook it's a machine, right? So I took a little bit of programming in high school. So I always try to think like how Facebook would write a machine. So if I'm Facebook and I have this campaign, I turn one off, I keep one on. My theory is that Facebook is going to try to do more of the one I kept on and less of the one I turned off. So even though you're not optimizing for those pieces, as you start to make these decisions, Facebook is going to naturally give you more of this and less of this, like more of the high quality, less of the lower quality. That's over time, optimizing and being very strategic on what you're keeping and what you're turning off is important because all data Facebook reads. So I'm a believer that if you have something on and you turn something off, it's going to try to give you more of what you kept on because it wants you to spend money. And you're clearly telling them that's what you want.
So when you're doing your testing for the audiences, for instance, because it's something we talk a lot about, at what point, how much data, if we worked off impressions, do you work off impressions? Is it before you make a decision on whether you're turning an ad off?
It's usually mattering. There's some kill metrics we have in this point, but it's usually 10x the CPA of the thing that we're optimizing for.
Okay, so you wait. Okay, so that's your indicator.
Yeah.
So the thing is but you've got to work with larger budgets for that, haven't you?
I mean, not necessarily. Let's say you're optimizing for lead, you're getting $10 leads. I recommend, you spend $100.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see that. So are you using UTMs?
It matters, but yes, at the end of the day, we're using UTMs. There's certain things that we have to use UTMs for, like Hyros. We use Hyros in a very different way that I think most people do. But yeah, we still use UTMs.
We had a conversation with some of the guys at Hyros the other day as to whether we look at bringing it in the house. How do you, what are your thoughts on it? You say you use it. Is it good? Yep. Because there's a lot of this. It's one of those things. Media buyers like ourselves are looking for these holy grails, aren't they? Something to help us out with our reporting and things like that. How have they fixed it? Have they figured something out?
I would say, to be completely blunt, it's hit and miss. Sometimes it works really well. And then sometimes for some reason the tracking is off or it doesn't integrate with certain softwares and such. We use it with all of our clients because of the quality aspect we're going for. All of our clients have a lower ticket front end, typically in a high ticket back end, or they get on a coaching call and then they have to, more of a sales call and they have to close them and then they have the sale. So the way that we mostly use it for, obviously revenue and where the call is coming from is important. But let's say that we have a booked call funnel. Someone has to get on the phone and talk to them. So Hyros shows us what exact ad and ad set that lead came from. So we always work with the sales team and we create a process around this. So every time they take a call or they have an application, they are marking if they're quality, if they're not quality, did they close, did they not close? And once a week, we're going through Hyros, we're typing in the email and seeing what campaigns it came from. And we're actually making our decisions based off of if they're quality or if they're not quality. So let's say there's 2 different ad sets that are running and they both have 10 calls. Yeah. Most people would go that far and say, hey, well, Hyros can help track that. And it will usually help track that. But we go one step further and say, okay, well, based off the data, this one produced 8 quality calls. This one produced 4 quality calls. So actually, if you take it based off of how much are we paying on a per quality lead or per quality call basis, the one with 8 is actually way beating the one that's with 10. And then from there, we have a lot more attribution and it makes it back to Facebook. So then we're making our decisions based off of the back end, which typically you can't see, right? Typically, you're not going to be able to see, hey, this email came from this ad set, this ad, like this campaign. You're not typically going to be able to see that, but HighRush gives us the way to do that.
Yeah, so we're finding with a lot of e-com clients at the moment, and people we consult for are just finding that what Facebook is saying compared to what Shopify is saying are just completely out. So you've obviously got this estimated modeling. What are your takes on Facebook's estimated modeling? How do you see that working?
We do a lot of custom stuff on our side. If you're doing e-com, there's a company called Kevlar, something like that, that does integrated server-side tracking, and supposedly it's pretty accurate, but they only integrate with Shopify. We don't have that option, but I know a lot of people in one of the communities that I'm in, they use that because it's server-side tracking already set up. You just integrate it. And server-side tracking, and help explain this piece as simple as possible. When people turn off their tracking, what happens is when it makes it goes from Facebook to their landing page, that connection happens. But when tracking is turned off, the connection back to Facebook gets blocked. But what server-side tracking does is it takes that data and turns it into first-party data and bypasses that. So it actually goes from your Facebook to website to server, which makes it first-party, and then it makes it back into Facebook, which means ad blockers, typically depending on your structure, typically ad blockers won't block it. iOS won't block it. A lot of these things won't block it because they're blocking third-party, which Facebook is a third-party pixel. But if you can turn that third-party data into first-party data, then it can get passed through.
Which is the CAPI.
Which is it? Kind of. CAPI there's other ways to do. So CAPI, technically, if you just integrate CAPI, it doesn't do that because it's not actually first party it's turning it into. So you do get better. But when you actually have a server where the server is your subdomain.maindomain.com, and that's your actual server, and it passes back to Facebook, that's true first party integration.
Right. So this is what we need to survive, essentially.
Basically, yes.
With Google taking off their third-party cookies.
Yeah, in my opinion, finding ways to turn your party from third party into first party is the name of the game right now, and how to do accurately. It's a rabbit hole. I'll tell you what, I've been studying this for about 3 months now, pretty much all day, every day, to get to the point that we're at. So that is the name of the game now, in my belief. And a lot of people are taking off cookies. With server side, you can actually write your own cookies. You can have your own first party cookies. You actually write, even if they have Safari that lasts 4 days or less 7 days for a cookie, you can write a cookie that lasts a year, that bypasses ad blockers. The name of the game now, in my opinion, is making your data first party.
Because it's the only way we know, isn't it, really? So going on to Facebook lead forms, Facebook shops, Instagram shops, TikTok have brought in their instant page to help with e-commerce and things like that. What do you see as being the future for the platforms? Because we have a lot of talk in our end that we foresee it. And obviously at your level and your agency, you're going very, very in depth. But when we think about, there's not loads of agencies like yourself. So the majority of marketers out there on all these platforms have got to try and figure out a way, haven't they? Otherwise, because now it comes down to, in a year's time, unless you know how to do this properly, you're probably going to fail, which means agencies are going to take on more clients, but agencies don't want every client, do they? Because they only want a certain size of client, etc. So for anyone who can't afford an agency, how do you see these shops? Because Facebook, I've sent my team away this week to go, right, we need to investigate Insta shops, Facebook shops, how to build them, because Facebook's made them more customizable. Before it was like, it pulled in your catalog and showed your catalog. And they've realized, well, that sucks because it looks really bad. So now you can customize them. And what are your thoughts on that? I think that's the way these platforms are going to go, because Facebook's, as an example, is going to go, well, if no one can track outside of our platform, we need everyone to stay in our platform.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. So the way that I look at Facebook is made as e-commerce platform. And so they're trying to bring these things in-house for e-commerce. And I think that is a good solution for e-commerce companies, because then again, everything stays first party. They don't leave the platform. They have integrated. As far as lead forms, I have a different opinion on that. So the way that I look at lead forms, I can't control the quality of traffic coming in. We're very big on high quality traffic and seasoning our actual events, which is another reason why we use custom events. So if we're using lead forms, we can't control the quality because we have no way to train Facebook on this is the quality of person we're looking for. Facebook's just going to go after basically the cheapest lead because you're saying, give me, like in Facebook, you're literally saying, give me the lowest cost thing. So Facebook's going to try to give you cheaper and cheaper leads compared to when you're off platform. This is why we had to figure out all this other technical stuff is we can then train Facebook on, hey, these are the types of people we want. And so when we go and use that custom conversion, we're going to get more people like that because we've already trained Facebook on that's the quality of prospect we're looking for, not just the cheapest lead. And so Facebook's going to say, hey, they're turning off ads here. They're keeping these ones on. They're sending traffic to this pixel, to this event, do more of the quality and do less of the non-quality. And so I'm very big on taking that piece of control back from Facebook just based off the way that it's built. I mean, it's not made for fun. It's not literally paid for funnels or webinars or VSLs. They have their whole structure. The whole process is made for e-commerce. If you really think about it, it's made to drive down the cost of the thing that you're optimizing for. So e-commerce is a little bit easier because you might be optimizing for a purchase. Facebook is like, hey, I'm going to try to give them the cheapest purchase because your ROAS goals are strictly, your product is $10. That's how much it costs you. It's selling for $30. Anything in between is your margin, basically. Compared to us and longer high ticket info stuff, it's not like that. We don't need the cheapest lead. So our whole thing is how do we have Facebook give us a quality lead for cheap? And that's what a lot of our stuff is based around.
So it really just from a lead gen point of view, it depends. But we're doing something for a big hearing aid company, and they've got a load of money, but their infrastructure at their end is just bad. So it's how can we get started really quickly before we've built extra landing pages and all this sort of stuff. So it's okay. Well, the only thing we can do is basically build you some Facebook forms. And the campaigns actually work really, really well. So after they've got the form, and I think there's other things that come into it. We're going to an over 55 marketplace, which the gray market, which we call it. Great on Facebook. They love it, don't they? They love the app. And I think that's done it compared to when you're trying to get the younger generation and things like that, because we would always say, well, taking people out of Facebook, taking them onto a landing page, nurturing them, getting through your forms, you're always going to get a high quality lead, aren't you? Because of the processes they're going to have to go through. But then you've got the option, obviously, on Facebook of saying, okay, well, rather than pre-filled information, I want them to fill the information in themselves. I actually want them to use the keyboard on their phone. And then, they give in other things like I want them to check over that and make sure it's right before it gets submitted by putting these things in place. Because, in the past, when we've done stuff for PTs and things like this, you're getting people that have said, I don't remember, I didn't do that. And it's like, no, but your leads, you've just literally done it like 5 minutes ago. And they don't even remember doing it because it's just, they don't even realize what they're doing. Facebook has made it so easy. They don't even know they've pressed the button.
Oh yeah. I'm big on making people jump through more hoops to pre-qualify themselves because we have experience and we have data to prove that the more hoops you make them jump through, the more quality, the more chance they're going to buy all those different things. One of the cool thing that you do with lead form for that reason, like when you make them type it in, is cool because a lot of people don't actually use the same email that they signed up with Facebook with. So you might be getting a lead. It might be a live email, but it's not one people check. So if you look at your email deliverability from running lead form ads that are auto-filled, it's garbage because no one uses those emails. I'm going to say nobody, but I saw a survey one time was like 35% of people still use the same email. And every time I talk about it, I'm like, do you still use the same email? No. Do you? No. So people don't even use the email they signed up with Facebook with.
Well, I'm in my early 40s. I know, Bailey, I know I look younger. But I can remember when Facebook first started. I can remember when my partner at the time was like, too confusing for me. I'm not going to use that. So we're going back a long time. My email address hasn't changed. It's still the same. Like, do I still use Facebook or the email?
You still use that same email?
Only now because it's associated with my Facebook and all that sort of stuff. But no one else I know would have. If they had a jackass@hotmail.co.uk, it's still going to be that 15 years later, 20 years later.
Yeah. And what a lot of people do, because they don't know about things like unroll.me, which you can just go in there and like mass unsubscribe from stuff. A lot of people just say, hey, my stuff's filled with spam now, I'm just gonna use a new email. And then people do that all the time. And so when they do that, then you're not going to get access you're not going to get access to their eyes because you're using an older email.
So going on to the custom audiences again, when you're saying seasoning that, you're getting the pixel more intelligent with the right stuff, are you then building lookalikes based off the custom audiences to go back into the beginning of the funnel again?
Well, what do you mean?
So you were saying a minute ago how, by using these custom audiences, Facebook's getting more intelligent on who your ideal customer is, who the buyers are, and things like that. How are you putting that back into Facebook? Are you going back to the beginning again and making lookalikes out of what's been going on, custom conversions from phone calls and things like that?
Yeah, we actually typically don't like to do it based off the pixel data because number one, the pixel data is always changing. And two, Facebook doesn't get a ton of that data back no matter how you have it set up. So what we actually do is, yes, we still use the bottom of funnel type audiences, but we actually upload them because a variable, if you use a pixel audience, is as they get more data, Facebook's actually adjusting the lookalike. So over week over week, the lookalike tweaks a little bit. So now that's not another controlled variable. As you scale, if you slowly start to get lower and lower quality leads, the good leads start to get pushed out of those audiences. And you actually, in turn, will start to scale campaigns that are actually getting lower and lower quality leads, exponential month over month. All of a sudden, 4 months later, the audiences don't work anymore because the original audience isn't even that same audience anymore. So we always actually upload the list with phone numbers, with sometimes IP addresses, whatever we can get from the client. And then we use that as the lookalike that we're using. But yes, we are taking the bottom of funnel metrics, booked calls, sales, quality of booked calls, taking everybody that doesn't have money, creating lookalikes, uploading that list, create lookalikes, exclude them, that type of stuff.
Have you seen that from excluding a lookalike? Have you seen a big difference in the ads by having those exclusions in there?
100%.
Really?
Yeah, huge difference. Yeah, we have clients that will bring on board.
No one's doing that, are they?
No one's doing that. No, that's kind of like my golden tip. I've been told multiple times I should stop talking about it. And I'm like, I love giving back about that piece. Because the fact that not a lot of people are doing it, right? It might get a little saturated, but I'm just trying to help give back. So we do this with a lot of our clients. And one of the very first times we did it with a booked call funnel, we took their cost per quality booked call and cut it in half within a week, just by taking their people I've talked to on the phone that were not quality, lookalike, exclude them, and cut that quality call in half within a week.
Okay. What would be your minimum size list, conversions, whatever, to build a lookalike from? Because I know Facebook will allow you to do it. Yeah. But what would you say is because we get asked this a lot, what that threshold is?
Yeah, I say you could test it at 100. I mean, it might not work, but it's worth testing. But typically it's 200 or more.
Facebook says 100, don't they?
I think Facebook says, yeah, but I don't trust anything Facebook says in that aspect.
Yeah. Okay.
I always test it.
Good, because I think a lot of people think it's in the thousands.
No, I actually prefer not to do that. If I actually have a list that, let's say it's 1,000, what I'll do is I'll just do it in chunks of, let's say 300 or 333. And so this is how we get really creative on creating new lookalikes of high quality people without it being the same audience. Because one thing we've also realized is if we run more than 2 active ad sets, the same audience in our ad account, all 3 of them get penalized. So the CPMs go up, the CTRs go down. Something happens at the moment we do 3. So it's like, how do we keep using high quality audiences without getting taxed on it? So if we do have, say, 1,000, we'll break it up into 3 different segments. We'll test one audience would be the first segment, one audience would be the second segment, one audience would be the third segment, one audience would be all 3 of them, one audience would be 2 and 3, one audience would be 1 and 2, one audience would be 1 and 3. And so now from the same core audience, now we have 8 different audiences or whatever that comes out to. We're not getting taxed on it because it's different audiences, but they're still of the same quality.
So when you say, let's say you're starting from a list of 1,000 name, email addresses, telephone numbers of your clients' purchases. Okay. Yeah. You'll split that up and make different lookalikes. So let's say it's 1,000, let's say it's 900. You got 3 300s. Mm-hmm. You would make 3 lookalikes based on 300.
I would make more than that. You'd have 3 from those individuals. You'd have 4 with them combined. You'd have 5 with 1 and 2. You'd have 6 with 2 and 3. You'd have 7 with 1 and 3.
Wow. Okay. There's some good going on that. And the thing is, the way you're working, because you deal with accounts that are big and high ticket, and they've got a lot of spend, you're having to do this, haven't you? Otherwise,
Yeah.
you're running out. Otherwise, it's like, okay, well, I've built my audience 1 to 10 based on purchases, or we're out, we're done.
Yeah, exactly. So we always refresh these audiences. If we have a bunch of data, we'll do quarterly data. One thing we have realized too is buyer behavior changes quarter to quarter, especially in our niche. So let's say that we have a client and they ran a similar funnel last year in Q1. We'll then go back and take the Q1 list from last year and do the same thing with it, right? So we're always trying to figure out creative ways of creating these audiences of high quality people. And so it's always changing. They do a promotion, they have new buyers. We use that new list. We keep the old ones that are still working, but then we use the new list. They have more refunds, they have more disqualified people. We have a new list, we upload that and we use that for exclusions. So we're always figuring out ways to refresh it.
Because we talked about, we're coming to the end now. So kind of final question. We've talked about lookalikes a lot, and it's great that you've said this, because I think it goes against absolutely everyone. And it's funny, a lot of the people we've interviewed still love, at your sort of level, love lookalikes, whereas a lot of people are saying they don't work, especially on YouTube. Interests. Do you build any ads based on interests without any lookalikes? How do you find they're working?
Very, very rarely. We find that we can get a much better quality person with the way that we do it. We can get a much better quality person using the lookalike. Plus, Facebook, since 2 years ago, has taken like 95% of the interest away. I was just doing a training yesterday, and like Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins, they're not even interested in guitar anymore. And those are big names.
Our hearing aid client, we had some interest that were working really well, had some lookalikes, but the interest was like hearing loss, gone. Yeah. And I literally got a warning up, and every single interest that we're doing in the campaigns all disappeared. And then only last week I'd build some audiences for a client, a spreadsheet, just so they can have a look at what we're sort of doing. And yesterday I went back in to build them, all gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're deleting all the spiritual ones too. On my talk yesterday, they're like, what would you do? And I think it's like April 15th or something. What would you do? I'm like, I would just buy as much data as possible before then, because your best bet after that to target anything spiritual is going to be to have a lookalike at that point. So do different sets of campaigns. You do it for 2 weeks, you get the data, you figure out who's quality, you adjust audiences, and over time, try to get better and better quality people up until that point, because then you want to have the highest quality audience that you can when that happens, because you're not going to be able to target anymore. So now's the time to go and blast money and spend it so you have that data, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for coming on. I've learned loads. I'm going to be going back to the team saying, right, this change of plan lookalikes are great.
Perfect. I'm glad I could help.
No, that's brilliant. But it's really good to have you on the podcast. I'd love to invite you back again in 6 months time, see how you're getting on, see what other changes are happening, and see if you might come on next time. We're like, lookalikes, we've moved on from those now.
Yeah, scrap that.
Yeah, we need something else. But brilliant. Is there anything else you want to add to the podcast, or direct listeners to anywhere you want to go, into your Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I think Instagram's where I post a lot of my content. So it's BAILEY_PROULX. That's where a lot of my micro content gets posted out. So you can follow me on there and help my engagement there a little bit.
Yeah, you're being active. You're getting very active there lately.
I have been. I have a whole team that's helping me do it now.
It's like you've woken up like a bear coming out of a cage, and it's just like, a cave, sorry. And it's just like every day, it's like bang. But great stuff, because I think what's happening a lot. I mean, I obviously push everything through the podcast, and I don't really, my Instagram, I think I've got like 85 followers on Instagram. I just don't do anything there, even though I post to it. But it's like, there's so much out there where people, I think what's happening at the moment with experts is people are still working on the basics, especially on YouTube, how to set up a CBO campaign, how to do this, which is all great, but no one is actually saying what's actually happening. And that's why I like with yours is like, don't be doing this anymore. You have to be doing this. You see them where it's just like, I saw one yesterday, which is how to put this strategy in place and your Facebook ads will work automatically. And I was like, okay, it's intriguing. Have a look at that. It's on for 8 minutes. And it's like the most basic thing. And it's just like, what? Like 5 years ago. Yeah, absolutely. 5 years ago, you could have taken a picture of a piece of broccoli and said, buy this, and you would have got sales. Yeah. It's just not like that anymore yet, but people are still doing it, not educating. So from my point of view, finding, I've seen your stuff, saw something on Instagram the other day, wasn't it? And I was just like, you've got to come on the podcast. You need to speak to my audience.
Yep. I've been trying to keep it as high level as possible. I see a lot of accounts that are posting very basic stuff. I'm like, this isn't helping anybody. You're misinforming the market.
It's not basic. Unfortunately, though, all the listeners of this would love to hear that it's basic, it's not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's not basic, but if you have the right information, it helps demystifies a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. Well, listen, have a great day. We'll keep in touch, and yeah, take care.
Cool. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Appreciate it.
No problem, mate. See you. Bye.
See ya.